Close your eyes now, sweet one, and let the softest rain begin to fall against an old wooden window somewhere far away. Just a gentle tap, tap, tap that melts every thought you carried here tonight. Breathe in slowly with me, hold for a moment, and breathe out everything that feels heavy. Good. Again, in and out. Feel your shoulders sink a little deeper into the pillow as the rain keeps whispering that it's safe to drift. Tonight I'm going to wrap you in the warmest blanket of a story, the one they filmed in 1946 when the world was still healing from war. A story that Frank Capra poured every drop of hope into, called It's a Wonderful Life. It's about a man named George Bailey who once dreamed of shaking the dust of his tiny town off his shoes forever, but life kept giving him reasons to stay. And one snowy Christmas Eve, when despair finally pressed too hard, an angel named Clarence was sent down to show him why every single heartbeat of his mattered more than he could ever imagine. You'll hear every detail tonight, every crunch of snow under desperate boots, every tremble in a voice that almost gave up, every tear that fell onto a bank ledger, every bell that rang when an angel earned his wings. Nothing will be hidden from you, because this is a bedtime story meant to cradle you, not tease you. And as I tell it, I'll pause sometimes just to let the rain speak, or to turn a soft page of an old book you can almost smell. The paper slightly yellowed, carrying faint traces of vanilla and cedar from decades on a shelf. Trivia the first, whispered only for you. This film was almost never made. The studio thought it too sentimental, too risky after the war, and Capra had to fight for every dollar. When it finally premiered, it lost money at first, and only years later, when it accidentally slipped into the public domain in 1974, television stations played it over and over every Christmas until it became the heartbeat of the season. Funny how the things we almost lose become the ones we love the most. Let me ask you something gentle, no need to answer out loud, just feel it settle in your chest. Have you ever felt, even for a single evening, that the world might be better off if you had never opened your eyes that morning? Hold that feeling softly, like a snowflake on your palm, because tonight we're going to watch it melt into something luminous. Another quiet fact. Jimmy Stewart, our George, had just come home from bombing missions over Germany. His hands still shook sometimes when he wasn't acting. Watch closely in the bridge scene later, and you'll see the trembling is real, not glycerin tears, real shaking from a man who had seen too much darkness and was being asked to believe in light again. Capra kept the camera rolling, because he knew only truth could carry the story. Feel the temperature drop just a little now. Imagine cool night air brushing your cheek as we step together into Bedford Falls on a winter evening long ago. Snow is starting to fall in thick, lazy flakes that catch the golden glow of street lamps. Somewhere a church bell tolls 7 times, slow and heavy, like a heartbeat. You can smell wood smoke curling from chimneys, and underneath it the faint sweetness of pine wreaths hung on every door. There's a young boy in a knit cap sliding down Main Street on a shovel, shouting with pure joy, and if you listen very carefully you can hear the scrape of metal on ice, the laughter echoing off brick buildings. That boy will grow up to be our George, but tonight he's still free, still untouched by the weight of promises. Let your own breathing slow to match the rhythm of the falling snow. In and out, in and out. Every exhale carries you deeper into the story, deeper into the softest dark where only kindness lives. One last reflection before we truly begin. Have you ever noticed how the people who give the most away are often the ones who feel they have the least to give? Tonight we'll walk beside someone who poured himself out again and again, until he believed his cup was empty, only to discover it had been filling the cups of everyone around him all along. The rain outside our imaginary window is softening now, turning into the gentlest hush, like someone shushing the whole world just for you. A page turns, slowly, the paper brushing against paper with the tiniest crinkle. Another page. And another. We're ready. Whenever you feel completely heavy and safe, let your next breath be a little sigh of surrender, and we'll step together through the snow into the very first chapter of George Bailey's wonderful, heartbreaking, miraculous life. We're walking now, very slowly, down the main street of Bedford Falls in the year 1919, snow muffling every footstep so gently that the whole town feels wrapped in cotton. The street lamps are still gas in those days, flickering soft amber pools onto the sidewalk, and you can smell the faint metallic warmth of the flames mixing with the cold bite of winter air. 12-year-old George Bailey is hurrying past us in his drugstore apron 2 sizes too big, the sleeves rolled high, cheeks red from the wind. His breath comes out in little white clouds that vanish almost before they form. He's late for work again, but he stops anyway to help old Mrs. Blaine count her change because her fingers are stiff with arthritis and she's afraid Mr. Gower will be angry. George's voice is soft, patient, the way yours becomes when you speak to someone who might break. You can almost feel the cold brass of the coins as he places them one by one into her gloved palm. Inside Gower's drugstore, the air is thick with the scent of licorice whips, vanilla phosphate, warm soda bottles, and something faintly medicinal underneath. The wooden floor creaks under George's boots, a comforting, familiar sound, like a grandfather clearing his throat. Mr. Gower is behind the counter, shoulders hunched, eyes red-rimmed, because a telegram just arrived. His only son has died of influenza in the war. George sees the telegram trembling in the old man's hand, and quietly pockets a small bottle of poison that Mr. Gower, half mad with grief, almost puts into a child's prescription for diphtheria. George refuses to fill it even when Mr. Gower slaps him hard across the face once, twice, the crack of palm on skin sharp in the quiet store. George's cheek burns crimson, but he doesn't cry. He just whispers, "Your son died, Mr. Gower. You're not yourself." And the old man collapses against him, sobbing into the boy's thin shoulder. Can you feel the damp wool of Mr. Gower's vest against your own cheek, the way George must have felt it? The salt of tears, the scratch of a grown man's beard, the weight of being the only steady thing in someone else's storm. Trivia the second, very softly. That drugstore set was built so perfectly that the crew kept wandering in during breaks to buy real ice cream sodas from the working fountain. Jimmy Stewart said years later that the taste of real vanilla phosphate brought him straight back to his own childhood in Indiana, Pennsylvania. Sometimes truth hides in the smallest details. Let me ask you something that can rest on your heart like a snowflake. Have you ever been the only person who noticed someone else was about to make a terrible mistake, and you stepped in even though it hurt? Did your cheek ever sting afterward? Or your heart feel strangely full? Years drift by now, like pages turning slowly. George is 21, tall and restless, hair falling over his forehead, wearing the same dreamy half-smile that makes every girl in town sigh. He's finally saved enough money to escape Bedford Falls, to see the world, to build skyscrapers 100 stories high. Tonight is his last night before the boat leaves. The air is warm, almost sticky with summer. Crickets hum in the grass, and fireflies blink lazy golden signals above the lawn of the Bailey house. George is dressed in his best suit, holding a battered suitcase that still smells faintly of leather and faraway places he's only read about in National Geographic magazines. His little brother Harry has just graduated high school, and the whole family is throwing a party. There's laughter spilling out of every open window, the clink of lemonade glasses, the soft scratch of a phonograph needle dropping onto a Glenn Miller record. George dances with Mary Hatch under strings of paper lanterns, her blue dress brushing against his legs like cool water. When she leans close to whisper something, her hair smells of lilac and sunlight. They laugh because the lantern light turns her eyes the color of twilight. You can almost taste the sweetness of the punch on your own tongue. Feel the warmth of another hand slipping into yours the way Mary's slips into George's. He is so close to freedom he can feel it humming under his skin like electricity. But then Pop Bailey pulls him aside on the porch, voice low, the porch swing creaking softly under their weight. The building and loan is in trouble again. Mr. Potter, that cold spider of a man who owns half the town, is trying to shut it down the moment Pop is gone. "You're all Harry has," Pop says, eyes pleading behind wire-rimmed glasses. George feels the old familiar hook sink into his heart. He hears himself promising to stay just a few months, just until Harry finishes college and can take over. The suitcase sits forgotten in the hallway all summer, gathering dust the color of broken dreams. Reflection, whispered close to your ear. Have you ever stood on the edge of a dream so bright it hurt to look at, only to turn back because someone you loved needed you more? Did you tell yourself it was only temporary, even while something inside you already knew it was forever? Another quiet fact. The suitcase you see in that scene is the exact same one Jimmy Stewart carried when he left for the war. Capra wanted something real to sit in that hallway, something that had actually waited and never got to travel. Props with memory. Time folds again. Gentle is closing a book for just a moment. 4 years later, Harry comes home with a college degree and a beautiful new wife, and a job offer from her father in Buffalo. George meets the train, smile plastered on, heart quietly cracking. He watches Harry's face fall when he realizes what staying means now. George claps his brother on the back, tells him to go, says the building and loan is his burden now and his alone. The whistle blows, the train pulls away, and George stands on the platform long after the smoke has vanished, hands deep in empty pockets, staring down the tracks that will never carry him anywhere. Feel the late afternoon sun on the back of your neck, the way it feels when hope quietly slips out the door and you pretend you don't notice. The metal railing of the platform is still warm from the day, and if you press your palm to it, you can almost feel the vibration of the train long gone. One more gentle question before we walk on. Have you ever smiled while giving away the last piece of your future so someone else could have theirs? Did it taste like metal in your mouth, or like the sweetest thing you ever did? We're turning now, very slowly toward the evening that changes everything. The air smells of rain coming. George is walking Mary home after another long day of fighting Potter's latest scheme. They pass the old Granville house, windows broken, vines choking the porch. Mary laughs and says she used to make wishes here as a little girl. George teases her, voice light, but his eyes are serious. They stand together under the moon, and when she throws a rock to break a window and make a wish, George picks one up too. He doesn't throw it. He just holds it, feeling its cool weight, knowing some wishes are too heavy to ever let go of. And then the rain begins. Soft at first, then harder, drumming on leaves and rooftops like 1,000 tiny fingers tapping you into sleep. George and Mary run laughing through the downpour, clothes clinging, hair dripping, until they stop beneath a street lamp and the whole world narrows to just the two of them. When he kisses her, the rain keeps falling all around them like a curtain, shutting out every disappointment that ever was. Let that kiss settle on your own lips for a moment, warm and surprising and full of promise. Let the rain keep washing everything clean. The rain has softened now into the gentlest mist that clings to your skin like the memory of that kiss, and we are drifting forward through the years, as quietly as wedding rice being swept from a church steps. George and Mary are married on the most ordinary of days, no grand ceremony, just promises made in front of a few friends, while the building and loan teeters on collapse again. They step out of the taxi for their honeymoon and find people lined up outside the doors, terrified faces, hands clutching savings books, because rumor says the bank has failed and Potter is trying to swallow the building and loan whole. You can smell the fear in the air, sharp as ozone after lightning. George feels the old hook twist deeper. Instead of boarding a train to New York and then Europe, he and Mary open the doors and give away their honeymoon cash, $200 at a time, counting out just enough for each family to survive until Monday. Mary stands beside him in her traveling suit, veil pushed back, cheeks flushed, handing over the last bills with a smile that never wavers. When the doors finally close at nightfall, only $2 remain, and they laugh because they are married and alive and still have each other. Trivia the third, whispered against your hair. Those panicked extras were told to act as terrified as they truly felt in the Great Depression. Many of them had lived through real bank runs. Capra didn't have to direct them much. He just opened the doors and let memory do the rest. Feel the crumpled bills in your own palm for a moment, the paper soft from too many worried fingers. Have you ever given away the last thing that stood between you and tomorrow because someone else needed it more? Did your hands shake, or did they feel strangely steady? Time folds again, soft as turning a photograph over in an album. Now it is 1939. Then 1941, then 1945. Children arrive one after another. Janie, who will learn to play Hark! The Herald Angels sing, very badly on the piano. Little Pete, who still wets the bed, Zuzu with her pedals, and Tommy, who asks endless questions. The Bailey house is the old Granville place, patched and painted and filled with love instead of ghosts. You can smell coffee always brewing and bread baking, and the faint sweetness of Mary's talcum powder drifting down the stairs. George comes home late every night, shoes soaked from walking because the car gave out years ago, tie loosened, hair going gray at the temples far too early. He kisses each sleeping child on the forehead, careful not to wake them, breathing in the milky scent of their hair. Upstairs, Mary waits in a faded robe, candlelight flickering across her face. Still beautiful, still the girl who threw a rock at a wish. They speak in murmurs about bills and Potter and the war across the ocean, then fall asleep holding hands because that is still free. Another quiet fact. Donna Reed really broke the window with her own throw in one take. The prop man had hidden a marksman off camera just in case, but she shattered the glass perfectly and they kept it in the film. Sometimes the truest moments are the ones no one planned. Reflection, soft as a blanket being tucked around you. Have you ever measured your life in tiny, repeated acts of staying? Staying for the children's bedtime stories, staying for the leaky roof, staying because leaving would break more hearts than your own? Did you ever stand in a dark hallway listening to small breaths, and wonder how love became both your wings and your anchor. War comes. Harry flies fighters over the Pacific and shoots down 15 enemy planes, saving a transport ship full of men, earning the Medal of Honor. George stays behind with a deaf ear from childhood and 4 F's stamped on his papers, selling war bonds on street corners, rationing sugar, watching younger men march away while he grows thinner and more tired. You can almost taste the weak coffee and the metallic worry that coats every tongue in town. Then one Christmas Eve, everything finally breaks. Uncle Billy is carrying $8,000 in a newspaper to deposit money the building and loan desperately needs, when he gleefully taunts Mr. Potter across the bank lobby and accidentally folds the cash inside Potter's own newspaper. Potter finds it, says nothing, and keeps it. By late afternoon, the bank examiner is sitting at George's desk. Uncle Billy is tearing the office apart in blind panic, papers flying like frightened birds. George's hands begin to shake the way Jimmy Stewart's real hands shook after missions. $8,000 gone means ruin, prison, disgrace. Potter offers to help with a loan if George will just crawl. George looks at the cold lizard eyes across the desk and feels something inside him snap like ice on a puddle. He drives home too fast, nearly crashes, kisses the children too hard, snaps at Zuzu when her rose petals fall off and she cries, "Teacher says," every time a bell rings. He cannot bear the love in their faces because he believes he is about to destroy them all. The house feels too small. The walls pressing in, the air thick with pine needles and guilt. He kisses Mary goodbye with lips that tremble and drives away into the storm. Let the snow start falling harder now outside our own quiet room. Thick, heavy flakes that blur the streetlights into golden halos. Feel the steering wheel cold under desperate palms. The windshield wipers struggling to keep up with tears and snow both. Question, breathed against the shell of your ear. Have you ever driven away from the people you love most because you believed your failure was a poison that would spread to them? Did the road feel endless and the night feel hungry? George stops at Martini's bar, orders a double bourbon, though he almost never drinks. The place smells of stale beer and wet wool. Mr. Welch, the teacher's husband, punches him square in the face for yelling at a sick child over the telephone. Blood trickles warm from George's lip, metallic on his tongue. He staggers out into the snow, drives again, faster, until the car slams into a tree on the edge of town. Snow pours through the broken windshield like forgiveness that comes too late. He walks, half-frozen, to the iron bridge over the icy river. The water below is black and fast, rushing with the sound of every promise he ever broke to himself. He stands on the railing, coat flapping in the wind, and whispers the prayer no one should ever have to pray. God, I'm not a praying man. Show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope, then louder, raw, broken. I wish I'd never been born. The wind howls around him like every regret he ever carried. Snow stings his cheeks. And just as he leans forward into the dark, a tremendous splash rises from below, an old man's voice calling for help. George doesn't think. He dives. Water closes over him, black and shocking cold, like being born all over again into a world that doesn't want him. George surfaces gasping, lungs burning, and sees an older man floundering nearby, white hair plastered to his head, spectacles fogged. Instinct takes over. He swims, grabs the collar of a threadbare coat, drags the stranger toward the shore where the snow has piled soft and forgiving. They collapse together on the riverbank under the toll bridge, both coughing, both shaking, both alive. The old man smiles through chattering teeth and says his name is Clarence Oddbody, Angel Second Class, and that he jumped in to keep George from doing something foolish. George laughs, a cracked, exhausted sound that tastes of river water and blood from his split lip, and tells Clarence he wishes he'd never been born. Clarence's eyes twinkle behind steamed glasses, and he answers, very gently, "All right, George, you've got your wish. You've never been born." The wind shifts. The snowflakes seem to pause mid-air, then reverse, swirling upward instead of down, as though time itself inhales. A strange hush falls, deeper than any silence Bedford Falls has ever known. George feels it first in his chest. An emptiness where something vital used to be, like a tooth pulled so cleanly you don't notice the hole until you run your tongue across it. They walk back toward town together, boots crunching on snow that now feels colder, sharper, as if the world has been dipped in liquid nitrogen. The streetlights are dimmer, the golden glow replaced by a sickly greenish flicker. Martini's bar is no longer Martini's. The sign reads Nick's in harsh red neon, and inside the jukebox blares angry jazz while hard-faced men play pool. Nick, the bartender, once warm and laughing, snarls that he doesn't serve bums, and shoves George so hard he stumbles into the sawdust. George's deaf ear suddenly hears perfectly. Clarence whispers that without George saving him as a boy, Mr. Gower spent 20 years in prison for poisoning that child, and now Nick owns the place because Martini never got the loan to buy it. George touches his ear in wonder and terror. The skin is smooth, no scar, no damage, because the childhood sled crash that took his hearing never happened. He is perfect, and perfectly alone. Reflection, soft against your temple. Have you ever wished to erase the parts of yourself that hurt, only to realize those hurts were the very proof you had lived and loved? They walk on. The building alone is a boarded-up shell, windows smashed, weeds growing through the steps. No Bailey Park exists. Instead, endless rows of identical Potter tenements stretch into the darkness, gray and sagging, laundry frozen stiff on lines like the arms of the hopeless. People hurry past with eyes down, collars turned up, no one greeting anyone. George tries to light a cigarette. The match flares, but the flame is cold, blue, unnatural. He drops it with a hiss. Trivia the Fourth breathed like warm breath on cold glass. The crew built an entire second, nightmarish Bedford Falls set on a different part of the backlot, and filmed it at 4 a.m. so the shadows would feel wrong. When Jimmy Stewart first walked onto Pottersville, he forgot his lines. Because the ugliness felt so real, he started crying for real. Capra kept the camera rolling. George runs now, breath sawing in his throat, to the cemetery on the hill. A small crooked stone reads, Harry Bailey, 1911 to 1919. Clarence's voice is gentle. Your brother fell through the ice when he was 8, remember? You weren't there to save him because you were never born. And the transport ship he saved in the war, every man on it drowned. George falls to his knees in the snow, fingers clawing at the frozen earth over Harry's grave, whispering, "No, no, no," until the word loses all meaning and becomes just the sound of a heart breaking open. Question, barely louder than the wind. Have you ever realized that the worst thing you ever feared about yourself, that you don't matter, is the exact opposite of the truth? He runs again, to his mother's house. The warm porch light is gone. The paint peels in long gray strips. The windows are curtained in cheap lace. Mrs. Bailey answers the door, suspicious and hard-eyed, hair pulled back severely, mouth a thin line. She doesn't know him. She has never had a son named George. She rents rooms to strangers and locks her doors at dusk because the town is dangerous now. When George begs her to remember, her hand trembles on the chain and she whispers, "Get away from me," before slamming the door. The sound echoes like a coffin lid. Then to Mary's house, or what should be her house. It is dark, shutters hanging crooked. Clarence tells him Mary never married, never had children. She is an old maid librarian who closes the library early because she is afraid to walk home alone in Pottersville. George finds her on the street, glasses slipping down her nose, arms full of books, eyes wide with terror at the catcalls from passing men. He grabs her shoulders, pleading, "Mary, it's me, it's your George." But she screams and fights, beating at his chest with frightened fists because to her he is only a strange man accosting her in the dark. Violet Bick, once the town flirt with a heart of gold, is dragged past in handcuffs, makeup smeared, dress torn, shouting curses, because without George's kindness she ended up on the streets. George backs away, hands over his ears, running blindly through streets that smell of gin and despair. Neon signs buzz overhead. Girls, girls, girls. Pawn shop. Loans at 30%. The snow is dirty here, trampled and gray. Every face is a stranger. Every laugh is cruel. He falls against the iron bridge again, the same place he almost jumped, and now he understands. This is the world without his pain, without his sacrifices, without his love. And it is hell. He sinks to his knees in the filthy snow, tears freezing on his cheeks, and begs with everything left inside him, "Please, God, let me live again. I want to live again. Please bring me back." The wind howls once more, then stops dead. Snowflakes hang motionless, then begin falling the right way again. Warmth creeps back into his fingers. His deaf ear rings with sudden familiar silence. Clarence is gone, but the toll-keeper waves cheerfully and calls him by name. George touches his bleeding lip. Real again. His scarred ear. Real again. The bump on his head from the car crash. Real again. And he laughs through sobs because every hurt is suddenly the most precious thing he owns. He runs. Through streets that are bright and clean again, past houses with Christmas trees glowing in every window, past people who smile and call, "Merry Christmas, George," as if they have been waiting all night just to say it. He bursts through his own front door, and the house wraps around him like the warmest arms he thought he had lost forever. The familiar smell of pine needles and cinnamon and Mary's coffee rushes into his lungs, and he actually inhales it like oxygen after drowning. The Christmas tree lights are flickering, half the bulbs burnt out, tinsel drooping, but it is the most beautiful thing he has ever seen. Children's toys are scattered across the rug exactly where they were left. Zuzu's rose petals lie on the hall table like tiny red hearts that have been returned to him. He touches each one with trembling fingertips, whispering their names as though they might vanish again. "Mary?" His voice cracks on the single word, raw and wondering. Footsteps hurry down the stairs, and there she is, his Mary, eyes wide with fear and fury and love all at once. She had been on the telephone for hours, calling every friend, every neighbor, begging them to help find her husband who had driven away broken. When she sees the blood on his face and the wild light in his eyes, she stops breathing for a moment, then runs into his arms so hard they almost fall. He buries his face in her hair and sobs, "I'm back, Mary, I'm back. I'm all right," over and over until the words lose shape and become only joy is left. The children tumble down the stairs in their nightgowns, sleepy and confused. Zuzu reaches up with her fever-warm hand and touches his cheek. "Look, Daddy. Teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings." George laughs through tears and kisses her forehead so tenderly the room itself seems to sigh. He kneels and gathers all 4 children against his chest, feeling their small hearts beating against his own, and for the first time in his life he understands that this messy, noisy, imperfect love is the skyscraper he was born to build. A knock at the door. Then another, and another. The sound of boots stamping snow on the porch, voices calling, "George!" and "Mary!" The door opens and people pour in. Friends, neighbors, customers of the building and loan, even the bank examiner who had come to close them down. They carry baskets and envelopes and jars of coins and crumpled dollar bills. Martini arrives with a huge bottle of wine and kisses George on both cheeks. Sam Wainwright wires $25,000 from London with a telegram that says, "Hee-haw and Merry Christmas." Old Man Gower, tears streaming down his lined face, presses a check into George's hand and whispers, "You saved me once, son. Let me save you now." Money spills across the dining room table in glorious chaos. 5s and 10s and 20s and coins that clink like tiny bells. Someone starts singing Auld Lang Syne off-key and everyone joins in, voices rising until the rafters shake. Violet Bick slips in quietly and adds her savings, eyes shining because George once believed in her when no one else did. Bert the cop and Ernie the cab driver stand arm in arm, grinning through tears. Even Mrs. Bailey, George's mother, is there, looking softer than she has in years, pressing a handkerchief to her eyes. Mary stands beside the table radiant, counting and stacking and laughing, because the total keeps climbing past 8,000, past 10, past 15. The bank examiner takes off his hat and adds his own wallet with a sheepish smile. Potter's $8,000 are never mentioned. They have been made irrelevant by love. Trivia the fifth. Whispered like a secret only you and I share. The mountain of money on that table was mostly real cash borrowed from the crew's own pockets. When filming ended at dawn, many of them were crying so hard they forgot to take their money back, so the prop master simply locked the table in a safe until the next day. Reflection. Soft as candlelight on tired faces. Have you ever been surrounded by proof that your life mattered more than you ever dared believe? Did the room feel suddenly too small to hold all the love rushing in? Harry arrives last, still in his Army Air Force uniform, snow melting on his shoulders. He has flown through a blizzard to get home because Mary's telephone call reached him at the airfield. He raises a glass and toasts his big brother, the richest man in town. The room erupts in cheers and whistles and fresh tears. George can only stand there, soaked in bleeding and utterly, perfectly whole. On the table among the money lies Clarence's gift, a worn copy of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Inside, in spidery angelic handwriting, are the words, "Dear George, remember no man is a failure who has friends. Thanks for the wings. Love, Clarence." A bell on the Christmas tree tinkles softly once, twice, as though someone invisible is brushing past it. George looks around at every face he has ever helped and every face that is now saving him, and the smile that breaks across his own face is the same one he wore as a boy sliding down Main Street on a shovel, only now it is older, deeper, unbreakable. Question: breathed against your closing eyes. Can you feel, right now, all the invisible threads connecting your life to every person who would run through a storm to keep you safe? Let those threads cradle you like the softest blanket. The snow outside has stopped falling. The house glows warm and golden against the dark. Somewhere inside, a piano begins to play Auld Lang Syne again, slower this time, sleepy and gentle. You are safe. You are loved beyond measure. You are, in every way that matters, wonderful. The singing has faded now to a low, distant murmur, the way voices do when they drift down a hallway and slip under a closed bedroom door. The last footsteps crunch away across fresh snow. Car doors thump softly. Engines turn over and fade into the night, until Bedford Falls settles back into its gentle Christmas hush. Inside the Bailey house, only one lamp still glows, a small amber island in a sea of quiet. George and Mary are moving through the rooms together, turning off lights one by one, gathering scattered coats, smoothing the rumpled tablecloth still heaped with money they no longer need to count. Their hands brush every time they pass each other, as though they are afraid the other might dissolve if they stop touching for even a second. Upstairs, the children are finally asleep again, breathing slow and even, rose petals tucked safely back into Zuzu's little fist. George stands in the doorway watching them, one arm around Mary's waist, her head resting on his shoulder. Moonlight falls through the window in a silver bar across the floorboards, and for a long moment, neither of them speaks. There is nothing left to say that tears and laughter haven't already said better. A final soft bell tinkles on the tree downstairs, just once, like a goodnight kiss from Clarence. Let that sound settle inside your chest now, warm and round and perfect. Let it ring behind your eyes until the whole room feels bathed in it. You can still smell the faint trace of pine and candle smoke, still taste the sweetness of celebration cake someone pressed into your hand hours ago, still feel the ghost pressure of hugs from people who love you even if you have never met them in this life. Reflection, the very last one, whispered so close it is almost your own thought. If an angel ever showed you the world without you in it, would you recognize how many lights would go out forever? And would you, like George, run home through any storm just to stand in your own hallway again and feel ordinary, flawed, exhausted, necessary? You are necessary, not because you are perfect, not because you have built skyscrapers or saved transports full of soldiers, but because you have stayed. You have answered the telephone at 3 a.m. You have forgiven when it hurt. You have carried someone else's dream when your own grew too heavy. Every time you chose kindness over being right, every time you swallowed pride so love could speak instead, you changed the shape of the world more beautifully than you will ever know. Let your body sink a little deeper into the bed now. Feel the sheets cool against your back, the pillow cradling the exact curve of your head as though it was sewn for you alone. Let your fingers unclench. Let your jaw soften. Let every small worry that followed George to that bridge tonight drift away on the same wind that carried Clarence home. The snow has started again outside our quiet room, soft, steady, forgiving. Each flake is a promise. Tomorrow is new. Debts are paid. Love remains. You can hear it landing on the roof like the gentlest fingertips saying, "Hush, hush, hush." One last gentle fact, barely more than a breath. Frank Capra once said he made this film for the desperate, for anyone who had ever felt like a failure. He never imagined it would become a ritual that tucks millions of us into sleep every December. And yet here we are, you and here you are, held in the same arms that held George Bailey when he finally understood he was rich beyond counting. The page of the old book turns one final time, slowly, the paper whispering against paper like a lullaby. The rain that began our evening has returned, softer than thought, tapping a rhythm that matches your heartbeat, slowing, slowing, slowing. You are home. You are enough. You are wonderful. Sleep now, dear one. The angels have their wings, and you have yours folded quietly around everyone who will ever need them. Good night. Good night. Good night.